what's the Patriots' biggest need? Is it a quarterback? Is it a weapon in the passing game, a wide receiver or a tight end? Offensive line help, because I've heard lots of crying about the offensive line. Or other, you can write in, you can vote. And I guess you could submit coach. I've already heard a lot of coach on social media, on the text line. You can weigh in on the phones as well. To me, this one's not that difficult. You need a quarterback. You've needed a quarterback now for a couple of years. Quarterback has been your biggest issue. Like Bill Belichick with a better quarterback, I think would look a lot different. Never mind some of the weapons here with a better quarterback. Never mind the offensive line. Like, the offensive line gave Mac plenty of time to throw on that interception. And, Mac in the second half of that game, I think largely had some time to throw, not the first half. And he's the one making poor decisions. And so, big picture, and I don't care if it's the draft, which would be my preference. I don't care if it's a trade for Kyler Murray, which we discussed yesterday, although maybe he's going to get outright cut by the Cardinals in the offseason if they don't want to move forward with him. A free agent like Kirk Cousins who's coming off an injury. I really don't care. But that to me is by far the biggest need on this team. Bigger than a weapon in the passing game, bigger than the offensive line, bigger than more defensive help, bigger than a coach. That's the biggest need for this team. How would you vote, Mego?
I agree. Look, I would say yes to all the needs listed, but it's got to be the quarterback. They don't have a starting quarterback on this roster for next season. And if you're thinking that it could still be Mac, I would just ask you, show me in the modern NFL a quarterback who has had decreased quality of play every season, more losses every season as his career goes on, lowered stats in just about every category, has been benched 4 times, and has turned it around with that same franchise. It would be just absolutely the first time that this has happened, and I just can't put my faith in that going forward. And we talked about this before. I don't think it's completely Mac's fault. I think he was set up in a terrible situation, but you need to move forward with someone else. My preference is that you go to a high draft pick because you're probably going to be positioned there anyway. So you go and get the quarterback of the future. I know you're still rolling the dice. There's only maybe a 30 to 40% success rate with a high draft pick, but that's probably how you're going to get your quarterback of the future. I'm done with bridges. I'm done with redemption projects, reclamation projects. Go to the draft. Start over.
Yeah, so are you citing the numbers that Arcan sent yesterday? Who wrote that, Arcan? With all the various highly drafted quarterbacks over the last 4 or 5 years, who wrote that?
I forget, but I can go check.
Okay, but the point is, basically a third of those quarterbacks have hit. The ones taken in the first 15 picks of the first round over the last 4 or 5 years, whatever it was.
It goes back to 2018.
Okay, so you hit on a third of them. Well, you might say, oh, wow, you only have a 33% chance? 33% is better than 0. That's what you have right now. You have 0% right now. You just increased. Thank you. Peter King wrote that yesterday, along with destinations for Bill Belichick that we talked about. He listed off a bunch of teams, including the Dallas Cowboys. So in that same story, Football Morning in America, he wrote about the various quarterbacks and how they mostly failed, 33%. I guess most positions you draft don't have a super high hit rate. It's probably a little lower at quarterback, but most positions you draft don't have a high hit rate. And you increase your odds by about 33% because right now it's 0. So my vote, like Mego's, is quarterback. You can vote now at Jones and Mego, our big Q at 2, our big question of the day. We start every show with it. You can also weigh in. 617-779-7937. What do they need? Big picture. What does this team need to figure out? Quarterback, wide receiver, and tight end, basically a weapon in the passing game. Offensive line help, or something else. You can vote there. Arcan, what do they need?
For me, it's wide receiver, not tight end, just wide receiver right there. That, to me, is the most important. I do think they need help at quarterback, too, and the offensive line could use some work. I don't think you leave any of these things be, but the number one thing for me is you have to improve the pass catchers on this team. Otherwise, the next quarterback's going to come in and be in the same position, I think. If you have a group that's maybe the worst in the NFL, you could argue maybe the Giants are a little bit worse. I don't know if I'd argue that one too hard, but you're bottom 2, and I think bringing a rookie into this would be a real big mistake without really committing to an upgrade at that group, and also trying to bring in some veteran quarterback who came from another situation where they had a star wide receiver and try and get him going with Tyquan Thornton and Pop Douglas. I just feel like is a total pipe dream. So I'm saying wide receiver. You have to improve that. It's 2023, going to be 24. You need to have a modern offense, and that's more than just a quarterback. There's a lot of quarterbacks out there. I don't think very many of them them, if any of them, would be successful with this group of pass catchers. So upgrade that and then get the quarterback. That's what I think.
So you're to play out a scenario. I think some Patriots fans are starting to familiarize themselves with the upcoming draft. Some of the big names, especially at the top of the draft. They know Caleb Williams, needing to be nursed by his mother the other night, and Drake May.
Imagine how much he'd cry when he sees these wide receivers.
He might go back to USC. He might.
Devontae Parker's going to make him cry right away.
I think people know Marvin Harrison Jr. too. So in your scenario, Arkin, Patriots are drafting second, third, fourth, something like that. You want them to draft the wide receiver, overtaking the quarterback, and then sign a quarterback, trade for a quarterback, draft a quarterback in the second round. I think Cadlick laid this out on social media today. You can follow Mike Cadlick on Twitter. Check out his work on the Odyssey app. But I think he had like a scenario where they drafted Marvin Harrison third and then got Michael Penix, the quarterback out of Washington, second round. That's the avenue you'd rather take.
I'd rather do that, yeah. Bo Nix, Penix, one of those guys. Even if you have to stick with Mac another year, I don't know if I'd make him the starter and say it's his job and no one can take it like they did this year. But even if he's going to be around, I'd like to see him with a good wide receiver. I'd like to see him with a real offense.
Okay, so that's
all of that.
That's where I draw the line.
All of that to me would be better than, I think would be more important than just immediately getting one of those first two quarterbacks. So, I just don't think they're that good.
So that second part, Mac with Marvin Harrison, I don't want to see. But if you're telling me they draft Marvin Harrison, I don't hate that. I'd prefer a quarterback. But I don't hate that. Fine. You get Kyler Murray and you draft Marvin Harrison. You get Kirk Cousins and you draft Marvin Harrison. You take a quarterback in the second round and you get Marvin Harrison. I could be talked into that. ESPN wrote about this today. It was Matt Miller, one of their draft guys. He writes, Patriots' biggest need, quarterback. Sorry, Arkin. Mac Jones isn't the long-term solution. Through 10 games this season, he ranks 25th in QBR, 20th in completion percentage, which, by the way, that's shockingly low for a guy who's supposed to be accurate. And he's thrown 10 interceptions, tied for the most in the NFL. This was obviously written before Josh Allen zoomed past him last night.
What a race this is between those two, by the way.
Yeah, well, Allen's going to win it going away.
I kind of want to see Matt keep playing just to see who's going to finish with the most.
I think if he kept playing, he might beat out Josh Allen. The Patriots will have options, he writes. They'll have a top 5 selection, and if Caleb Williams or Drake May are on the board, it's an easy decision to reset at quarterback, but they could also go the free agency route with Kirk Cousins or even the trade market, Kyler Murray. So what's their biggest need? 617-779-7937. Quarterback, weapon in the passing game, O-line, or other. You can vote now. Lines are open for you on Jones and Mego with Arkin.